The loan trading is closed on the 5th of January 2023. Please read my disclaimer and remember all my calls can be wrong. Any trade you make should be at your own risk. Look for the pattern with the early low, which is this. Tomorrow should have the early high. We said there was a higher MEJT target, but we had a wall into the close, and even though that target was close, often these walls respond by gapping down sharply, and that's what happened. Said wall into the close often leads to a gap down. We said if we break under the lows of the current consolidation, it should be a long way down. Bulls need to stage a rally which sticks soon. They haven't been able to do it, and they certainly couldn't do it today. We've continued to fluctuate between these green lines, which are prices of which previous FOMC announcements were made. There's a rule that when you're fluctuating between lines, the one that gets hit the most times is the one that breaks, and that's this lower one. During the day, MEJT here gave a buy. MEJT here gave a buy signal. That just means there's a higher target printed immediately. Resistance over the target. There was an optional lower target to undercut this white line, which we did. Now, normally when you undercut a target, there's support. Support doesn't have to hold, but that would be support. The catch is when you've challenged support before, challenged the target before, that uses up the support. So you can't expect support to hold here. It doesn't mean it has to break, but there is no support right over here. This is where we are in the count. Doesn't make it the right count, but as long as it works, there's no reason to change it. Hold on. This is how it looks on the close-up. This A was huge, over 300 handles. We have ABC for B. Looks like we're starting an impulse down so far. I mean, let's not call it an impulse. Let's call it a strong move down. Usually the first 2 days of trading of the new year, that's this, get reversed completely by the time 5 days of trading are over. So that gives us 2 more days, by my rule, to break out of this range. We're pretty close to breaking out of it here, not so close to breaking out of it there. Now we do have a wall with gap pattern. These things will fill at some time, and often they fill quickly, but if they don't fill quickly, which would be by Monday's open, they don't have to fill any time soon at all. And this failure, after gapping up twice and giving back practically all of it, and then retesting this line all this time, makes us very susceptible to breaking down, undercutting this, and having a big drop. Just don't forget, if you get sharply and up, that kills the call before the open. Tomorrow's pattern has the early high. We could gap down. Typically it's a bearish day with a low in the final hour. Usually the low was under the early high, but lately it's exceeded quite a few times. We have a NASDAQ McClellan oscillator reversing through its upper Bollinger Band. It gives a sell signal. Nothing's perfect, but this one is one of my favorite signals. Doesn't mean it works every time. The bearish patterns we mentioned yesterday still are in effect. The employment report comes out before tomorrow's open. I have no reliable way of predicting the reaction. It's usually a pretty big reaction, so I can't rule out gapping up and sidestepping recent action, which remains quite bearish and vulnerable to moving down sharply. So if we don't gap up smartly tomorrow, nothing is killing – the patterns I mentioned yesterday. which would lead to a pretty sharp drop coming up. It's a pattern with the early high. Until we open, you can't be sure what will happen. Until you break under these lows, you can't be certain the drop starts, but it sure is shaping up that we're going to move down, depending on how we open tomorrow. And that's today's call.